Today, guys, we're going to be talking about exotics that I want my hunters to be eyeballing going into this next season. Some of these were pointed out directly by Bungie in the most recent TWAB, but I wanted to dig deeper, as it's not until we really start to mull over these changes that we realize the gravity that some of these buffs present. Now, we've already covered Warlocks, and if you want to check out that video, a link to that will be in the description below. And we even did a follow-up video as we completely missed Storm Dancer's Brace. If there is an exotic not on today's list that you feel like it's going to be a meta option going into next season, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and a reason why you think it's going to be a meta exotic, and I'll probably make a follow-up video similar to what we did with our Warlocks. Now, with that being said, let's begin. First on the list is an obvious one of which Bungie spelled out for us, and that is actually Bombardiers. Yeah, this exotic is about to be meta for so many reasons, even outside of what Bungie spelled out for us. Essentially, though, Bombardiers comes with a perk called Parting Gift, where dodging leaves behind an explosive that detonates after a short delay. Now, the complaint for the longest time is that the delay takes too long, that it should be more instant. Regardless, it does damage to the surrounding enemies. But going into next season, Bombardiers is going to be doing a number of other things, depending on the subclass that you have currently equipped. So if you're rocking an Arc subclass, you'll be able to blind these enemies. If you're rocking a Solar subclass, you'll be able to burn the enemies. Stasis, you'll be able to slow, and for Void, you'll be able to suppress. Now, all of these are great changes, but there's two that I really want to zone in on, and let's start with Stasis. First up, you'll be able to slow people with the detonation of this bomb. Depending on how many stacks of slow applies, that in combination with Winter Shroud may actually be able to freeze opponents on dodge, as again, Winter Shroud allows for your dodge to slow nearby targets. If the stacks from Bombardiers is substantial enough to max out those slow stacks, you will be able to freeze opponents when you dodge next to them. Sounds pretty nasty? Turns out that's actually not even the nastiest part here, which takes us to the burn when equipping a Solar subclass. Guys, this didn't hit me until I started reading this, but Blade Barrage is about to be disgusting with Bombardiers, and it already was pretty good. You can see gameplay right here. We're killing Greg over and over again with 1-2 punch and knife trick. But again, one of the biggest things that was hindering the melee combos for hunters, outside of course Liar's Handshake, is because you could not separate melee inputs. And if you were too close to an enemy, you would just melee them instead of throwing your knife. But stated in the TWAB a few weeks ago, Bungie's actually separating melee inputs, where you can now pair a keybind to your charged melee. You see, guys, hunters for a very long time has had melee capabilities rivaling that of Titans, and even in certain scenarios, surpassing Titans. Trust me, it's a hard pill to swallow, but the numbers are the numbers. And what we've seen is that the only thing that was holding back hunters, especially in this setup right here, was that hunters had to generate enough distance from their target in order to get the charged melee off instead of a base melee. But then we take it a step further. The subclass buffs coming to Blade Barrage, I was not that impressed with until we started seeing the full picture. Knife Trick, which actually burns the target, got a duration buff from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. Doesn't sound that impressive, right? Turns out it's absolutely deadly, because two perks take advantage of burns. The Burning Edge. While enemies burn, your dodge ability recharges faster, and of course pair that with Gambler's Dodge, and you pretty much always have a knife, but simultaneously playing with fire. Destroying burning enemies recharges Knife Trick more quickly. The point here is that even though Knife Trick only got a bump there from 3 seconds to 4 seconds, that extra 1 second will go hand in hand in buffing the other two abilities on this subclass tree, which takes us to Bombardiers, which when combined with a Solar subclass will also apply burn. This burn, in combination with the burn that you're already doing, will synergize with this subclass, and we've seen it before, from Prometheus Lens to Jotun. There are certain weapons in the game that fall under that umbrella of burn. Bombardiers, though, by default, will now be able to apply burn, thus aiding a very, very potent melee inside of PvE, which we've utilized multiple times in the past. And I know a lot of people are going to say, yo, don't you have to be somewhat close to your enemies? Won't you just get shredded? You're right, but there's actually two mods that I'm hopeful for going into this next season. One of them being Solar Battery, which essentially makes you gain an overshield while you're dodging, and number two, Solar Plexus, which increases your melee damage. If we get one of these, I'll be very happy. If we get both of these, well, fellas, I think you know what to use. Which takes us to another exotic that will also be benefiting from these changes, and that is, of course, Arthur's Embrace. I hope we're saying that right. Weighted Knife gains a second bounce. Rapid precision hits with your weapon grants Weighted Knife a significant damage bonus, and the ability to stun unshielded combatants for a short time. Now, the Weighted Knife is nice. It does good damage. It also also nets you some pretty crazy shenanigans inside of Crucible. What I've run into when using this exotic though, is I have an enemy directly in my line of sight, right up next to me, and I really do want to throw a knife, but I can't because we don't have a separation there of inputs. Next season though, we will. So whether that enemy is 20 meters from you or 2 meters, it doesn't matter. Arthur's Embrace and Weighted Knife will be able to be utilized in all ranges. On top of that, utilizing it inside of PvE should be much easier with the melee input changes. This is just one of those exotics I'm excited to see how it plays out. For the most part, we meme with it inside of Crucible and that's about it. I think I'm still going to prefer Bombardiers with Blade Barrage, considering the burn that it can apply, but I really can't overlook the damage that Weighted Knife puts out. Which takes us to our third exotic on this list, Raiden Flux. This exotic benefits Arc Striders greatly. It's also one of the sexiest exotics in the game with the Siva ornament, but essentially it comes with Synapse Junctions, where quick successive attacks with Arc Staff increases its damage output and duration. Now, the reason why we bring up this exotic is actually from the Arc Strider buffs that are coming, and they're pretty substantial. Not only is Arc Staff getting a duration buff from 16 seconds to 20 seconds, and a Heavy Slam detonation radius buff from 5 meters to 6 meters, but it's actually getting a whopping 33% increase in damage inside of PvE. Fellas, next season might be the season you'll be using Arc Strider inside of PvE. Now, granted, there is some limitations to it, just like all melee-based supers. If you've got a boss that's levitating in the air and you can't reach them, I don't care how much damage your super does. It's pretty much next to useless. But in terms of clearing out ads, Raiden Flux and Arc Strider is really, really good, and I like to rock it with Top Tree a bunch. But with that 33% buff, though, coming inside of PvE, and that base duration buff, again, that's just a base duration buff, not even including Synapse and its duration buff. This is a super, depending on enough ads, can result in you lasting 30-35 seconds, which is plenty of time, fellas. You give me an ability to last more than 30 seconds, I will take it all day. Which brings us to our next exotic on the list, Lucky Pants. Yes, I think every hunter identifies with these pants for a number of reasons. It holds a special place in many hunters' hearts. It's also produced some of the most illegal builds we've ever played with. Lucky Pants comes with the perk, a legally modded holster, where precision hits loads 1 round to the chamber of a stowed hand cannon. Primarily, its benefit has been that hand cannons ready faster and essentially come with hot swap when swapping to them, thus allowing them to be more accurate after swapping to your hand cannon. Very, very good. But fellas, it's only going to get better. Lucky Pants is actually going to be getting additional functionality, where when you ready a fully loaded hand cannon that deals kinetic damage or damage matching your subclass energy type for a short time, each hit against a combatant from that hand cannon increases the damage of the next shot. Now, Bungie's already come out and said that this will not apply to Hawkmoon and this will not work inside of PvP. However, they didn't say anything about Ace of Spades. Guys, a long time ago, Lucky Pants granted us the build Illegal Ace, which if you're watching it right now, you're probably noticing, Cross, you're not reloading. Memento Mori just keeps proccing after every kill. That's right, guys. That was the Illegal Ace build, and it was only because of Lucky Pants. Now, I'm not sure if this is exactly what's going to happen next season. I am merely optimistic that that's exactly what could happen. Bungie saw Illegal Ace, and they moved to correct it pretty quickly, I might add. But I want to believe that Bungie saw it and thought, dang, that looks amazing. Hence the Lucky Pants buff that we're going to be seeing next season. Will this allow us to self-proc Memento Mori over and over again? Boy, I hope so. And considering that this will only apply inside of PvE, Bungie, just let it happen. Which takes us to another exotic on this list, Graviton Forfeit. This is an exotic that is getting a buff directly going into the next season. Listen, guys, I don't necessarily like to play with invisibility, but let me just say it is one of the most annoying tactics if you perfect it. But essentially, Graviton is getting a buff in its duration for invisibility. Its melee regeneration speed will now also increase based on the number of enemies near you. And while you are invisible, your recovery is greatly increased and your weapons reload more quickly. Now, we've done some fun builds with Graviton in the past, taking advantage of its invisibility, as it pretty much buffs all invisibility across all subclasses. I think for PvE though, Omnioculus has been my go-to exotic if I was to take advantage of invisibility for my teammates due to the damage resistance that Beyond the Veil grants. However, Graviton Forfeit is an exotic that I think is going to benefit the solo player, and especially inside of PvP. So don't overlook this exotic, guys. I know there's a lot of other ones, but depending on that duration buff, which again, Bungie didn't necessarily lay out for us. They didn't say 1 second or 2 seconds, so it's kind of concerning. Like, how much of an invisibility buff are we talking about? Duration-wise, it could be pretty substantial, maybe even double. Which takes us to our final exotic. I know it's getting a nerf, but I'm also thinking it's getting a buff, and more so for PvP, and that is Shards Shards of Galinar. Now, Shards stated as one of the exotics getting hit with the rest of the exotics that provide super energy. They increase the amount of super granted for hits, but total super regain is now capped at 50%. Now, this is definitely a nerf inside of PvE. However, inside of PvP, I'm hopeful that this is a buff, because at one time, like around Forsaken, Shards of Galinar would pretty much give you your entire super back inside of PvP. It was kind of crazy, which is why Bungie actually nerfed it alongside Ursa Furiosa. They appear to be doing another nerf as well, but more targeted at PvE. But the fact that they're increasing the amount of super granted on hits makes me think that you're going to net yourself more super energy inside of PvP than what you're currently getting. Of course, this is capped at 50%, but there's many times inside of PvP I don't even get 50%. So if this actually grants me more super energy, I may actually use Blade Barrage inside of PvP. Granted, Blade Barrage just needs a buff. I can't tell you how many times I see people whiff with Blade Barrage inside of PvP, and for the most part, the only place I really see people use Blade Barrage these days is on Atheon. So yeah, this is more of a nerf towards PvE, but it is a buff for PvP, which is why I wanted to bring this exotic up. So guys, those are the hunter exotics that I'm excited to use next season. Bombardiers is the big one. Raiden Flux is the other big one. And if we could figure out how to replicate a legal ace yet again, be looking for a lucky pants meta. If I missed any exotics on this list, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and depending on that exotic, we may even do a follow-up video. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.